Chapter 1. Writing and Publishing a Book. Publishing a manuscript is what we're going to talk about. I would like to begin with a question. Why should you write? Because a lot of people have a desire to do things, but they can't justify why. And some people may not be ready to write because they can't answer the first question. Why should you write? And why should anybody even want to read what you write? So that's an important question to begin with. Do you have a real purpose for what you desire to do? So here are some questions. And some answers that we can talk about. Why you should write? Because, first of all, the world is ruled by dead men. How can the world be ruled by dead men? Because dead men left their ideas on paper, and that's what writing does? When you write, you are leaving a legacy. It gives you the power, the ability to leave your thoughts beyond your grave. That's because ideas outlive men. All of us have great ideas. Some are still cultivating those ideas, developing those ideas, but those ideas are important. And I think the first thing you might need to get over is the fact that you do have ideas that are worth reading. I think the average person might feel like, what do I have to say to the world? Who wants to read what I have to write? And that barrier can stop you from writing. You almost assume that other people are opposed to writing, but not you. So you enjoy reading other people's ideas, never thinking that perhaps you may have something that is worth reading. So those issues we want to reset. We want to sell them. Another point, when and why should you write? Because your ideas should live beyond your generation. Nothing is as powerful as a book, no matter how much they develop electronic technology. The book will still remain supreme. They now have e-books that you can buy, but they're still books, and somebody's going to write that manuscript to download into that e-book. So the writing is always permanent. It'll be forever. No matter how you use electronic media, someone has to write the content, so the book will live forever. Books are so important that God used one himself. And God preserved his ideas for humanity not on a CD, not on a tape, not on a DVD. He preserved his ideas in a book. So, if God uses books to preserve divine knowledge, how much more should we use the instrument and the medium of a book to preserve our ideas, to outlive our own generation? When you go to college and pay money to study, you actually pay money to read books. A college education is simply you not being disciplined enough to read books by yourself. So you pay someone to make you go to the library and read. And that is called a college, the power of ideas. You go to college to get ideas, and then they certify you when you get a certain amount of ideas. It's called a set certificate or a diploma. So, books are so important that you actually pay an institution to make you read them. And what are in those books' ideas? So why should you write? Well, because you want to document your ideas. Because documented ideas gain credibility. Now, what do I mean by that? If you speak ideas as a public speaker, whether you are a motivational speaker or a teacher in a classroom or a preacher in a pulpit or a politician, those ideas will normally die as soon as you finish talking, and they would only be credible to the point of people's knowledge of you. In other words, based on what they know about you, that will determine how much credibility they will give to the ideas coming from your mouth. But the minute you write your ideas on paper, something happens to them. There is a tendency in humanity to believe anything that is written, even though it may not be true. Once it's documented, it receives credibility. This is why you can document foolishness and people buy it, because once you write it, it gains credibility. That's why you should write. Writing will automatically give credibility to your ideas. Why should you? Write because writing gives you life. It also brings life to the readers. Beyond your grave, A book will outlive you all the time because the book freezes your experience. It makes you eternal. It makes you speak beyond your grave. Actually, writing allows you to multiply and expand your influence. You might be able to speak to one audience. That could be 10 to thousands, but that's it. The world has billions of people. When you write a book, your ideas can go beyond you and enter countries you never thought possible that you've never visited. You will enter people's homes that you can never get into legally. You will enter universities and schools and colleges and children's lives and young people's lives who will never invite you in, but they'll invite your book. So your book, your writing, will give you influence. It expands your capacity to impact people, and this is why writing is important. Another reason why you should write is you should be qualified. Now, what qualifies you to write first is that you must have an experience. People don't want you to tell them other people's ideas because they can go to those people and get them themselves. They want to hear your experience. All of us have experience with life and with truth, and so you need to begin to think about it and gather and begin to document your experience with life. Second qualification, you must have a clear idea. Many times people ask me, what's the first step in writing a book? And my answer is, do you have an idea? Don't use the word idea. I'm talking about a big idea that is so important to you that you believe everyone else should know about that idea. Maybe as an experience, you had an understanding that you got about life, an experience that you had in life that became so important to you that you want to share with other people. That's what I call the big idea. You know every good book only has one idea in it, and you build the whole book around that idea. Every book on my table. Then the lobby has one idea in it, and everything is built around that idea. You keep building around it so that people walk away from that book with one idea, your one message. So the question is, do you have a clear message, a clear idea that you can grow and you can document? The third thing is the qualifications for writing a book is you must test and prove the idea if it works for you. If this idea, when impacted, would change your entire experience, transformed your life, then you have the beginnings of a qualification to write. Put your thoughts into writing. Sometimes I've seen people take my books, read them, and then collect information from my book and write a book from my information. That's not a clear idea. I've tested these ideas myself, so they are mine in the book. I've proven that they work. You need to go and get your own proof, so you can read. And, by the way, if you're gonna be a writer, you got to be a reader. You have to read a lot of books. There's nothing new under the sun. What there is are combinations of all things. So a writer never writes anything new. They just write it from a new perspective. A new means their experience with it. So you're gonna be a writer. You have to be a reader if you're gonna be a writer. You have to have had an experience with what you want to write. Now there are different types of books, so I want to be cautious here. For example, if you're writing poetry, it may be exquisite experiences that you have in life that you capture and in prose, and you want to write a poetry book. That's a different type of writing. Or if you want to write a journal from your experience and maybe traveling, or one ministry, or whatever you do, that's a different type of writing. You are recording your experience, and you can put it in a book, and people can enjoy that. Or you may want to write a fiction book. It's a different kind of book, but it still needs to have an idea in it. For example, Star Wars is a fiction series of books, and if you study Star Wars, it's really about one idea, and everything is built around the idea, and they've written many different volumes of that, which became movies that made billions of dollars, but they still have an idea in those books. But that kind of writing is not necessarily from experience. It's from a creative bent of fiction, where you have a creative mind to capture ideas and put them in a fictional form. I believe that most people that will read this have a different type of writing, which is writing that may be inspirational, educational, teaching, training, and experiential. I assume you are thinking about those kinds of our manuscripts, and that's what we're going to talk about. Next qualification to write, ask yourself this question: is the idea helpful to the greater market? In other words, you shouldn't write because everybody else is writing. You should write because you experienced an idea, or you experienced some truth, or some encounter with life that you believe other people could also experience with you. So you want to share that idea. You want to distribute it. You want to multiply it. Then you're qualified to write. If you had a good experience in a roach, you know women would be interested in that. Can this be consumed by a greater market? And it can be beneficial to them. But if the answer is no, then you haven't gotten an idea yet to write, because I've seen some books that shouldn't be on the shelf. One of the worst places to find good materials is in a Christian bookstore, because people got so many shallow experiences in these books. They're just like duplications of, just shallow experiences. There's no real deep contribution to a person's life. Some folks just want to see their pitch on the back of a book, or their name on it. There's no content, there's no I don't. I don't sit on a sit when I write a book. I have never done that. I've never done that. All of the books I've written are from an experience that produced a change in me, that impacted my life and totally transformed my perspective of life. And it's readjusted my life, and it was so real to me every time that I said, this will help people, and it becomes the idea that I build the manuscript around. Are you qualified to write? You must research your idea. Once you capture something that you think the world should know about, maybe a perspective of something, then you need to begin to do your research on that subject as well, because your experience with it is not the only experience with it. That's why you read a broader perspective of it. Get other people's perspectives on it. You want to get more depth, so you can have an even richer understanding of what you experienced. A good book would have references. A good book would have quotes from other people who can further enhance your idea. This is where people get lazy and want to research again. This is why you have to read to be a writer. If you don't like to read, you won't be a successful writer. You have to read other people's works. You have to read far and wide and broad, and you must be able to do proper research. Now, the third question is, what do you write? Well, here are some thoughts. This is very important. Always write your passion. You know if you are going to write something that you are not passionate about, you will find it almost impossible to finish that manuscript. You will be quickly paralyzed by procrastination because there's no passion or interest in you. In essence, you shouldn't just sit down and say, okay, I want to write a book. Where? And you shoot. But there's no motivation for the idea. Good writers never sit down and say, let me see what I want to write about. Good authors never do that good. Authors are almost driven to let something out of them. That's what makes it a good book. I normally tell people, look, if you are a public speaker and your ideas are what you communicate to the public, and this could be a motivational speaker, it could be a coach, it can be a pastor, a preacher, a priest, or someone who is always speaking their ideas to people. Well, you have to find out what message is your passion. In essence, I always asked people who you want to be an author. What is your word to the world? And everybody actually has a word to the world? The world normally doesn't allow you to develop that word. but everyone has something to say to the world. In other words, I am convinced that in every human there is at least one book, and that book is really a best-selling book. The problem is we try to mimic other people, try to write what other people write, and never find our own passion. So write your passion, past the standard forsaken. Yeah, I'll ask you a question. I want you to think in 5 seconds and answer me. What is your word to the world? What do you preach that is really you? And you always come back to it. What is it? What is it like? Life to the fullest. See now, what he is telling me is that no matter what you asked him to speak on, he's gonna end up on life to the fullest. That's how you know what your word is. This speaks on money. Money to make up like that for another. You keep coming back to your work. That's your passion, so your first book should be your passion, because your passion is believable. Then you pick that book up. They should feel the passion in your manuscript, because it's coming out of your very spirit. You know if you've got to make up things to write, you're not writing your passion. So you're going to write a book for the first time. Don't go to the bookstores and look at it with titles and then choose a title that you want to write on, because I know it looks nice, and no. What is your passion? First, it's easier to write it. You are more motivated to write it. It's natural to write it. You will have excitement when you write it, and it begins to explode like a river. Breaking the banks when it starts coming up because it's a passion. The second thing you should write about is your experience. Nothing is easy to talk about than what you experienced. So, write about your experience with whatever you can talk about the best. Write about it, whatever makes you feel real. Write that, and your experience of it makes you feel real. I have never written a book because I decided it's a good idea. You know, one of the reasons why the publishing companies love me, and I say this respectfully, I have about 4 publishing companies that compete for me, and all are trying to get me, even though I own a publishing company. Do you know why? Because I'm a very weird author. Some of the books I've written became a best-selling book. Authors don't do that, and people ask me, how did you do that? How did you? Is it possible for you to have your 50 books out of 50 best-selling books? That's impossible. It's because I don't just sit down and read. I write my experience and my passion. I write what has happened on a point of explosion in my life, something that deeply moved me, that changed me. So, it always comes out with that passion, and people will buy your passion. You know Rick Warren, for example. He wrote this book on the purpose-driven life that was from a series that he taught, and he got his ideas from some people. I won't tell you who they are now, but it became his passion. He caught something from the information and began to teach it to his church, and it lasted almost a year, and it became his passion. Not as difficult to follow up a successful book just because you were successful with a book, because you have got to find another passion. So, because you are successful in one book doesn't mean you have got to make another book. People are still looking for the passion. That's why you'll find good authors with the best-selling book one year. And then you don't hear about them for 3-4 years, and then they bring books out, but they keep falling flat, because they haven't found a passion again on what to write. Write your testimony. Testimony is things that you tested again because whatever your testimony in your life is real to you, so you can write on it easily. Number 4, write your revelation. And again, this is not a spooky word. Revelation means something came on in your life like a light boom, and you understand it. And I mean it explodes in you. What I'm really asking for is give me your passion, because you will die. We will lose it. Document your passion. Write your revelation. That's what I do. And another thing is to write your obligation. Here's a weird one. If you want to be a good writer, Write what you believe. You are obligated to leave the world. Do you feel a responsibility to leave? Would life have taught you to the next generation that's writing your obligation? You must feel obligated to get this on paper before you die. That's what you should write. Write your obligation. Another thing is writing your conviction. Don't write other people's convictions, because theirs are not yours. You need to write what you discovered for yourself. You must write what happened to you, which you deeply believe what you have been convinced about. Let that be the source of your manuscript, because people will pick that. Write the words. People will read your convictions. They're supposed to feel the conviction, and every line you write should lead them to your conviction. That's what you wrote. A good question is, when do you write? When should I start writing? The first answer is important, right? Where? There is a demand for it. For example, I have been speaking on the Jezebel spirit for over the years. I've been speaking on prophetic over 20 years. I've been speaking on the presence of God for the years. I wrote one of my first books, The Secret Place of God's Power. A well-known publisher picked it up and sold 100,000 copies. The problem was that I only received $8,000 in royalties. This is what birthed RWG Publishing, and my real passion for writing exploded. This was all written from sermons. They took the recordings of my words preached. Then they organized it into chapters. The manuscript of me writing a single word was that I really wrote with my tongue. They documented my tone, and I said that in my home, with this manuscript, for the first time in my life, with my name on it. And he said, go through it to see whatever you want to take out, change, or add, review, and revise is totally up to you. And I went through the whole thing, and I did my addiction, my adjustments, and added some things, and I sent it back to them. They added those things and sent it back to me, and after 3 or 4, they did those exchanges to clean everything up. They said, okay, we're ready to print, and they published the book. My point is there was a demand before there was a book. You know, if you decide to write a book, no one may even want to read it. It's important for you to talk about your ideas to test them on people, so you can test the interests of the market for your ideas. There are millions of books on the shelves that are not being sold. So, the demand from people shows that they are not obligated to buy your book because you published it. You have to make sure there's a demand for your idea, so you have to test your idea. Timing is important for releasing a book. The environment is important for dealing with the environment. Many books are coming out now on how to buy a house in downtime. More books will sell on know how to make your money grow in tough times. And you look at the bookshelves, all kinds of books coming out because of the environment. So you don't just write a book because you have an idea. Make sure that there's a demand for it. When you are competent in your idea, then you should write a book. Don't write a book because you've got a few thoughts about it. You have to be competent. That means you have to know this subject matter through and through. It is passionately driven into your bone. It's in your blood. You've done research. You believe it. You are convinced about you. Convicted about it. This thing is possessing you. You are competent in your idea. You have done your homework. You know this idea. You know your enemy. Now, another thing is, when should you write when you have tested your idea before? When should you write when you have proven that your idea works? When should you write? Normally, people write because they've been trying something for a long time. They've been proving that it works on other people. You need to make sure that what you want to leave in print is proven. Why should you write when the market needs your idea? Some of you right now need to write because of what you've been experiencing in your job, your work, your studies, and your experience. What the world needs right now is a good thing to write for some people, depending on what you've been being competent in. By the way, I'm not a normal man. So, I'm kind of a strange guy. Most people in life are good at one thing. My problem is I am good at a lot of things, and this is very rare. And I've been told by publishers, they said, look, we have no author who can write on 10 subjects and they are also bestsellers. They said no one does that, I'm not boxed in, so my books read books. What I mean is there are many types of books in me. They can go to a Christian bookstore and be in Walmart and be in Books A Million and be in all the secondhand books at the same time because they are multi-market books. The ideas are muddy. Not everybody can do that. So you need to check your diversity and your ability to expand your market. When should you write? Write when a market is demanding your idea. You may be professional in different areas. You should really think about putting your ideas on paper if they relate to the present conditions. How do you write is the question. But first, you should conceive the idea to become like a pregnant woman. Your idea should be deeply rooted in you. This idea, I can see it. It's clever. I know what it is, what it means. You can see this idea, and sometimes it takes a long time to conceive an idea. You may have to talk about it for years, and all of a sudden, one day you realize I've got something here. People are using it. They're believing it is helping people. Maybe I need to crystallize this and freeze it documented, so you've got to begin with a conceived idea. Then, the second stage of a book is conceptual content. You must conceptualize the content that would make that idea palatable. In other words, you may have one idea that's clear, but now you have to develop the content that you see in that book to support that idea. That has to be conceptual already, and that leads you to the third level of writing. And that is, you can write an outline. Outlines are important because they put the entire book on one sheet of paper and you can see all your ideas laid out. Conceptual writing is really just like what you learned in school. That's the writing part. You know that they say write an essay, and your teachers taught you to foresee or write an outline. You know you got to write in sequence and put support arguments and all that is important in writing. That's why writing an outline is critical. An outline can be simple lines or can be paragraphs, depending on how much you want to develop it. An outline is important, because actually, an outline is so valuable that you can set an outline to a publisher and get a contract in an amazing way. They will sign a contract with you, just an outline. If your outline is properly done, solid idea is sequential, content good, and research documentation to back it up. They will literally call you and say, look, we want to publish this book for you, and we'll pay you. So don't take lightly the outline. In my computer, I have outlines of about 20 books that I haven't written yet, and that's why the publishers visit me. They come fishing, and I know I'm very conscious I hold them back. I keep those things secret until I'm ready to consider contractual discussions. Your outline is critical. When you tell me you want to write a book, I will ask you for the main idea and an outline. You send out to me, I will write. Look at it, and I tell you, you don't have a book here, because the outline tells me whether you have a conceptual view of your idea, and you've got the content already clearly listed on paper that will back up your idea, support your arguments. An outline is powerful. After the outline, then you do your research. Research means that you begin to read other authors, go on the internet, get information. You can check to know definitions of words. All this is the research. You want to be able to research, gather information, validate your ideas, so that you will not have a book that is not solidly referenced. Some people write books that shouldn't be on shelves, because there's no research on 80% of the books in the Christian bookshops. I will never read. Why? Because we're lazy people who write their experiences without references, without research. You've got to do research. And then, after you've done your research, You compose antidotes and examples. These are important when you're writing a book. You don't just write books. I've read some manuscripts that are so boring. I have read books that have 1 sentence and 4 scriptures. So this is not a book. This is the Bible reference that you are creating and calling it a book. Remember now, you are writing because you got an idea that you are passionate about. You need to have some examples of other ideas. So, you want to have examples of descriptions, you want to have antidotes, little stories to help bring your idea home now. What's wonderful today is you can go on the internet and get 1,000,000 stories free. Did you know that as a matter of fact, anything went right on? So you were to write on dogs, type in dogs, and put dog stories on Google. You'd have 1,000 dog stories you can use in your book. There's no excuse, but that's called research. That takes time. And you are so quick to get your book out. You ain't got time. So only you one buys your book. Another great key, record your content. That means start writing your content. You can start with the introduction, and you can move on down slow. You can write by hand if you can't type, of course. Computers are a great tool because you get to keep things and adjust them and change them. You start recording your ideas, not writing for those of your public speakers. You have an advantage if you're a public speaker. From this day forward, if you want to become an author, you should record everything you speak on, every time you get it. Even if you go to speak on an event somewhere, tell them you want to record it, and you want to copy. I do it every time. Why? Because that content could be a chapter in your book. You did your research, you prepared yourself to speak. You did all of your planning for speaking. You got the examples of your stories already. It's in the speech. So, now you use that and just transcribe it. That's what publishers do. They would transcribe your recorded message while you wrote with your tone, so be conscious all the time that I can literally write a books from a series. And if you reach in series, it's easier for publishers to work with you. I reach in series because I don't preach sermons. I teach principles. So the Bible is a book of laws, so it's easier for publishers to work with me. Another key, write the content, and another is creating a manuscript. Now, a manuscript is almost like a finished book, and that's when you begin to see the formal formation of your ideas take shape. You begin to have a flow in this material. It moves successfully toward a climax. You begin to put together your thoughts in an order of priority and communication of building support for your idea. A manuscript is almost a complete. Book publishers love manuscripts. They represent a lot of money. Do the next, review your manuscript content, grammar, spelling, all kinds of little things now. By the way, most of us anagram are grammar teachers and English teachers who understand all that stuff. You don't need to be a good grammar writer to be a good writer. Your ideas are more important than your spelling. Let somebody else pay someone else to spell for you. It's your ideas that sell, not the quality of your writing. That way, writing quality should be good because your grammar is not important. What's important is that your idea is extra. So don't sit down trying to spell every word correctly and trying to find ways to better it. You're wasting your time. Your idea is important. The publishing company provides people to check your grammar. Your job is to get your idea in that manuscript. They will clean it up and miss out on that. That's what you paid them for. All that is their work. Another key is really seeking endorsements for your manuscript. And endorsement is important. And a foreword is important too, because again, what you want is to have credibility. Especially if you are a new author or an unknown author. You want to have the credibility of someone who is known in the marketplace, so you seek endorsements. You also can get endorsement from people who are not necessarily authors, but who are also well known, perhaps in a certain field. For example, if you're writing a book on economics, you may want to find someone who is well known in economics to endorse the book. You write something, Then maybe in marriage, you got to find somebody who is a very famous marriage counselor, not just on the book, because those endorsements give credibility every week. I received at least 2 manuscripts requesting my endorsement or my foreword. Why? Because I'm well known in the market, and people know that if the content is good, and I put my name on it, then they can write my name through the market as it does. You know, Michael Jordan gets paid to endorse Nike. You know Tiger Woods. The same thing. Nike then takes the name of product to the market, so if you have a book and you think it's a good idea, the content is good, and you believe that you want to have opportunities to share this with the world, then you want to seek good endorsements or good people to forward your product. Another key: submit your manuscript. This is important. That means you got to make many copies of it, because if you are entering the market as an author, it's a crowded market. Today, you may be able to send it by email as well. The average publisher today receives about 40,000 manuscripts a year. You are just one of them on the desks of the mandate of the publisher. Wow, that's about 4,000 manuscripts a month that they receive. So you better be good. This is why you can have a good manuscript and still not be published, because the time factor there comes. And the competition is high, and everyone's trying to get in the market. And lately, everybody thinks they can write, so it makes it even worse. Therefore, it does become 80,000. And therefore, you have to be really good for a person of a publisher to stop and look at your work. You've got to be really good. There's got to be something about you that makes them stop all. The other secret is you need someone who is successful with them to recommend you. Any way to leave the pack. So don't think that because you send your manuscript to 10 publishers, you don't get one of them. You're competing with about an average of 40,000 manuscripts. Each one of those publishing companies get good contents. I'm convinced it's good enough because my name, got a certain reputation. I gotta protect my name as well. I can't send them junk. So if I tell you to go back and start again, don't be insulted, because you embarrass me if I send them junk. They don't wonder about me because they know the standard they're looking for. I know the quality they're looking for, but if I recommend your project to them, my recommendation makes them take it out of the pack and put it on the chief editor's desk because they know me and many others. You can tell authors who are well known, look, you can submit this for a recommendation with me, please, and they can do that. But you've got to submit your mind, if you're my new script, to the publishers, and hope, pray, or know someone who knows someone. It's very important when you complete your manuscript. I'm seriously gonna pray, because the Holy Spirit can speak to a publisher to pull yours out of the pack. I've seen this happen to people, and the publisher would say, I don't know why I pulled this out, and then the book becomes a multi-million-dollar bestseller. Because somebody with a brain had a prior manuscript through the system. Don't forget God. You can open doors no man can shut. Shut those no man can open. I thought I would give you the process of writing a book. Now, I'm talking about publishing. Now, official writing. How do you publish it? First, accept your status as a writer. What that means is, look if you are an unknown author. Say to yourself, I am an unknown author. Except that no one knows you. Now you may have a good idea, good content, a powerful message. The world could be assisted by it, but no one knows you. So, accept it. I am an unknown author. Accept that, then we leave you to identify the appropriate publishing company. What do I mean by that? If you are an author, just starting out, you don't want to send your manuscript to the New York Times, or, to Portman Publishing Company in New York. Don't waste your step. You may need to start with a small publishing company. One may be in your neighborhood, or one may be just across the channel. Maybe one that you know also growing, and then looking for authors to test themselves with, not always knowing where you are in the system. And don't lift your expectations so high that you depress yourself when they tell you no. The other thing is appropriate publishing company also means your subject matter. If you're writing on love, you don't want to sell the publishing company that you know basically deals with something else. They will ignore your manuscript. So, the publishing company also will have to be identified. What kind of company is this? What kind of products do they produce? Is that appropriate for what I'm writing on because that helps you get in? Is this clear? Some companies publish sports books, but if you want to write on clothing styles, then look at your book. So you get to what kind of publishing company is this if you have a second publishing company and you got this religious book. They may say, look, send it to someone else so you don't think you are going to be accepted by any publishing company because you've sent something that they might not even open the package. Thirdly, submit the manuscript to many publishers. Add your submission can be your recommended publisher if this does not fit your company. Let's see what they say about this, so you gotta send it out. It's just like publishing records music. You know if it is the music industry and you want to publish music, you have to send that CD to all kinds of music houses, and one of them might bite. And normally, when you send a manuscript to a publishing company, you want to send a hard copy because you don't know them well enough to send in a manuscript by email. So you send a hard copy, and they open the box, take 2 seconds, look at it, and they don't stop. Let me look at this, and then they call you again. If you know somebody who knows somebody, it may help with that process. You could tell a publishing company, as an author, give me a phone call. Look, I'm sending you a publishing manuscript. I want you to take a look at it. This person is a good friend of mine. I think he's got good content, and you can send it by email because there's a relationship you're sending it through. Now, some publishing companies will tell you, send me an e-manuscript. You go on the internet, and there are 1 million publishing companies out there. They'll tell you if you would receive e-manuscripts, of course you're taking a chance, but they would make you send it. I imagine that's out there for the whole world. So, let's say 500,000 people send a manuscript the same day by email. You're lost, right? So even though that's accessible, it may not be the best process. You want to be as close as being distinctive as possible, and a hard copy will normally give you a little more distinction. Then accept and expect rigid rejection. Don't expect because you worked so hard on your work that someone is as suited as you are. They might even look at it. So, I don't feel you know that you're not good when rejected, but know that you are competing with 40,000 people, so you keep trying. You could then try considering self-publishing. Self-publishing is where you decide, no one wants to publish my work. I will publish it myself. And there are many companies that would be glad to publish your work. You can get it published online right in your house. You can send your manuscript to a company and send your payment. They'll finish all the work for you. They'll do everything. They'll do the editing, they'll do the pagination, they'll do everything for you and send you back a manuscript. You just pay them. And then there's if you pay the money and they send you a box of books with your name on the picture and everything else you can do that's self-publishing. Be willing to pay for publishing if they want to publish a book. Some of these can cost $10,000. I don't want a published book anymore. That would be my answer to that. So, make sure you can manage and budget for publishing, because publishing can be very expensive. A good publishing company will not want to print less than 1,000 books for you, because it costs less to print more if you've got a book that you want to publish. In other words, the more you order, the less it costs us for publishing and printing. Going self-publishing normally means that people may not be able to afford to publish a lot, so be prepared to pay a little bit more secular. Be willing to pay the price. Then consider self-distribution not as important if you self-publish. You got to self-distribute. Distribution is the key to success in business, not product development. Distribution, no matter how good your product is. If you do not have a distribution system, you will still be poor. Can I put it that way? A warehouse full of products is costing you money, So don't just publish because you want a book with your name on it, and then you keep it in the house, and then you try to peddle it to your friends. This is crazy. Because once all your 10 friends got it, you still got 100 books. So self-distribution has to be considered if you're going to self-publish. We gotta think of it first when you want to self-publish. These are the pros: you control the process. It's your book. It's your manuscript. You decide how to cover looks that you accept. You decide how many is printed, how many is distributed to you. What the cost is, not always important when you are self-publishing. You control the process. You control the cost. But you get to control distribution. You control the sales of your books yourself, and those that control the price points of your material. You also control the promotion of it. You've got to control the advertising and the marketing of it. This is a lot of work. So, when you're gonna self-publish, get ready. Don't expect to compete with the top sellers. Now, if you were a public speaker and you travel a lot, as some pastors, and you got a market that you always deal with, then self-publishing may be a little bit easier for you because you have a captive market. So you can actually bring your products yourself to the market. You can advertise it to your market promoter to sell it to your market. You can even make deals with your market with discounts. Self-publishing may show your market is big enough to pay what you pay to produce it. Publishing with a company. What are the pros? They got professional writers. This is the kind of things you pay for. When you publish with a company, you know. You may send a manuscript that is lousy to them, but they have writers who will take your manuscript, and when they finish with that, you can compete with any book and any store they professional writers. So, a publishing company provides you with writers and editors. Also, they will provide you with a professional manuscript. They know how the industry standard works, so they can produce a manuscript that has the standard of international consumption. Some of the books that I see people write shouldn't even be in their own house. They sell it, but they're not up to standard. For example, the standard for industry standard book is 168 pages. Write it down. Also, professional designs. If a publishing company publishes your book, they have a department that deals with designing the book cover, designing the photographs, designing the fonts. They do all that work because they understand the industry standard professional distribution system. Publishing companies are already in the system. They know how to get your book to any bookstore. You know, every time one of my new books come up 4 months before it's out, it's advertised. Sometimes my books are being advertised, and I'm still writing the last chapters. That's how powerful their distribution system is. And they actually sell the book to the wholesalers before I finish writing it, which puts pressure on the author. That's why you sign a contract. They sell the book before it's finished because it's in the system, and you can go actually online many times and see a book with my face on it. And the book isn't written yet because I'm in a publishing company where they have the distribution system so tight that they can literally sell it before it's produced. That's what they provide for you. They also provide professional promotion and advertisement. That's what you pay for. They got industry catalogs and industry retail distribution catalogs that you get your book goes in automatically before you even write it. And that catalog goes, say, to 30,000 bookstores just like that. Those bookstores look at the books that are coming out, they say they order this. They have the system they promote. They also have what I call preset credibility publishing companies who are known in the market. The wholesalers know them. The retailers know them. The bookstore journals know them. So, when a company sends out, say, these 5 books are coming out in the fall, they send those to the wholesalers, and then the retailers know that if a company called, let's say, Whitaker House Publishing Company sent you 5 books coming out, they look at them because the company's name Anybody But Me. So their credibility pre-sells your book if you go to a publishing company, and that the wholesalers know much about. Then you may find that the movement of your matured book may be slow because the companies are not recognized by the industry, yet be willing to pay the costs for publishing with a publisher. Publishers will charge you for publishing. You pay them for all of that. You know you pay them for all. You could even pay them for distribution if you want to. You can pay them for advertising in them that are manuals, and the journals you can pay for that. Or you can just say, publish it. I want to promote it. I don't want you to advertise it. I'll do it myself. You can do that. You can actually choose from a menu what you want them to do. The only problem is remembering that you're not well known in the distribution system, so you may want to pay that cost to get your name in the system. But you got to pay for that doesn't make sense because when you become known in the market, then they start paying you for your products. And when you become a best-selling author, they start negotiating with you. That's what you want to be. You want to be in a position eventually where you can say no and yes to different contracts because they know of your content, your quality, and your notoriety in the workplace. Be willing to submit to royalty standards. Now, you make your money in publishing royalties if you sell your own books. Of course, you make it through sales as well. But royalty basically is a residual income publishing company. If they were to accept your book to put in their system, they would say, we would take on your book as one of our books. We put it in our system, and we give you 7% royalty on every book. And if your book sells well, the first print sells well and they sold out, they say, we go into second print. And you can say, look, I want to renegotiate my royalty rate. And if you become a best-selling author, then the next book you negotiate with them, you can say, I want 10%. In other words, your power to bargain for royalty depends on the success of your book, but there is a minimum for royalty. I think is around 6%. Best-selling authors can get up to 50%, 30% depending on how big you are. I'm almost dead expect to be controlled by the publishers if they publish your work. This is important. You may decide. I want this cover design. They will tell you, no, we're going to design this cover ourselves now. Don't fight them too much if you are an unknown author, because they will design the cover based on the market demands. Some of you say my books are there. I know. Most of my books. They say you have an average of 3 seconds for them to pick your book up. 3 seconds. You do that. Also when you go to the bookstore. You take you and have 3 seconds to look at a book and decide to pick it up or not pick it up. So, the cover is important. So when they talk about designing your cover, they will control that if you are unknown. They won't put your picture on the cover, but I want to pass them out to you. They don't know you said so. They may emphasize the title and put your picture away in the small back room because you know you are unknown, so you don't fuss with them. If you are publishing your book, you are paying them to make you successful, so you have to give up some things to them publishing you. They may say, look, we can give you 5% royalties, and as a passive model, so you get 30. You know you pay for that. You gotta plant a seed before you reap a harvest, even in publishing. Well, let me just cover with these principles of publishing, but a real quick cover design, promotion, distribution, marketing, and having a good foreword, endorsement royalty. These are the basic words you need to be acquainted with in publishing. You have to have an understanding of graphics, cover designs, promotion. How do you promote that product distribution? How do you get it to the market? Very important in marketing, which audience you want your book to be marketed to. Now, some of my books are marketed to business groups. So you'll find the designs in those books are very different. And then some of my books are marketed to the Christian market, and some are marketed to a family market, some marketed to men, some to women. So they design things based on the market, and then you must be acquainted with things like endorsements. Well, that's what I could give you so far. Time has gone without any questions. I'm sure there are a million of them. Remember that I was just like you. I didn't know anything. I had to learn the industry. The industry is a very unique industry. So just jump into it and be successful. It's a very strange industry.